Alien girl hauls human from a broken dropship, but human finds the wreck coated with her role. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Ethan Cole didn't remember the impact, only the sensation afterward. The world tilted sideways, gravity slipping, metal groaning like a creature in pain. The broken dropship lay half-buried in a cloud of desert dust, its hull scorched, its warning lights blinking weakly in the late afternoon haze. Heat shimmered off the bent panels, turning the wreck into a mirage of red and gold. Ethan lay sprawled near the shattered console, helmet cracked, suit diagnostics flickering across his visor in erratic tides of static. The air smelled of burnt circuitry and warm sand. His pulse pounded in his ears, fast and uneven. He tried to move, but his left leg refused to respond, pinned by twisted metal. For a moment he just listened, to the faint hiss of a leaking coolant line, to the dry wind drifting over the dunes, to his own strained breathing. He wasn't a soldier, not anymore. Just a technician hauling survey equipment for a contract he'd taken to pay overdue bills. He let out a shaky breath. "Great job, Ethan," he muttered, voice weak. "Really nailed this landing." A shadow crossed his visor. Not a cloud. Not debris. Someone. Ethan blinked hard, vision swimming. Through the dusty glare stood a tall figure, her silhouette outlined by the orange sun lowering behind her. Smooth, soft blue skin. Violet eyes reflecting the dimming light like polished glass. Hair pulled back in a pattern he didn't recognize. An alien woman. Calm, steady, focused. She stepped closer, her boots kicking small puffs of sand as she reached the broken cockpit. Without a word, she crouched and pressed her hand to the bent metal trapping his leg. Ethan felt the vibration change, the pressure shifting. Her strength was surprising. Not violent, just precise, controlled. With one measured pull she lifted the warped panel enough for Ethan to drag himself free. Cool air hit his face as she helped him sit upright, her touch steady, almost clinical. He tried to thank her, but his voice cracked. She simply tilted her head, studying him with a quiet, unreadable expression, like she was comparing him to something she'd expected but didn't find. She offered her hand. He accepted it. Her grip was firm and warm despite the fading heat around them. As she guided him away from the dropship's broken frame, Ethan glanced back and caught a glint beneath the torn hull. Symbols etched into the metal, faint but deliberate, nothing like standard manufacturing codes. He didn't understand them, but they formed a pattern that made his pulse quicken, a pattern that felt connected to her. The wind shifted. She noticed his stare, her violet eyes tightening just slightly, as if she hoped he hadn't seen anything at all. Ethan leaned more heavily on the alien woman than he intended as they moved farther from the wreck, his boots dragging faint marks in the sand. The desert air was cooling fast, carrying the faint mineral scent of night, and the sun dipped low enough that long shadows stretched across the dunes like dark fingers reaching for them. She slowed her pace for him without being asked, her movements deliberate, each step measured as if she had practiced carrying someone before. When they reached a rise in the terrain, she paused, scanning the horizon with a steady calm that eased Ethan's rattled nerves. Her violet eyes reflected the dim glow of the first evening star. Ethan tried again to speak. "Thank you. I mean it." His voice was rough but sincere. She glanced at him, her expression unreadable, then looked toward a cluster of rock formations a few hundred feet away. Without words, she guided him there. The natural alcove at the base of the rocks provided shelter from the wind. Sand collected in soft drifts along the walls, and the space felt surprisingly warm as the last of the sunlight pooled inside. She helped him sit, the motion gentle, her hands steady even when his balance wavered. Ethan watched her kneel in front of him, adjusting a small wrist device that emitted a soft blue glow. The light shifted over her face, highlighting the faint specks of silver on her skin. He realized how quiet she was. Not silent. Intentional. "What is your name?" he asked. The question hung in the cooling air. After a moment she answered, her voice calm and low. "Saris." Ethan nodded, letting the name settle. It suited her. I am Ethan, he said, even though she must have known. Humans introduced themselves anyway. It was something grounding, something normal. Saris checked the joint seals on his suit, tightening one that had come loose during the crash. She inspected his cracked visor without touching it, almost as if she could feel the fractures through the air. Ethan studied her hands, the precision in her fingers, the faint glow at her wrist as she worked. You did not have to pull me out, he said quietly. You could have left. Her gaze lifted, meeting his. Something unreadable flickered there, then vanished. You were alive, she said simply. So I acted. He breathed out slowly, grateful but puzzled. There was more to it. He could feel it. Something about the way she had looked at the ship. Something about the markings he had seen beneath the hull. The desert wind brushed past them, carrying grains of sand that whispered across the stone. Ethan shifted, wincing as his leg twinged. Saris noticed instantly and adjusted his posture with practiced care, as if she had done this 100 times. A soft hum echoed in the space as she activated her wrist device again, casting a warm light that wrapped the alcove in a soft amber tone. It reminded Ethan of a lantern glowing in a cabin on a quiet night. You keep looking back at the ship, she said, her voice steady. He hesitated. There was something carved under the hull. Patterns. I have never seen them on a human vessel. The air tightened between them. Saris did not look away, but something in her posture shifted, like a string pulled taut. You should rest, she said. It was not avoidance. It was protection. Ethan leaned back against the rock, letting his eyes close for a moment, the warmth of the amber glow easing the ache in his chest. As he drifted toward sleep, he felt her watching him, not with suspicion but with a quiet, careful awareness. As if she was guarding more than just his injured leg. As if she was guarding the truth itself. Night settled over the desert in a slow curtain, soft and deep, turning the sky into a dome of scattered white stars. The temperature dropped quickly, the warmth of the sand fading as a cooler breeze swept across the alcove where Ethan rested. He shifted slightly, feeling the stiffness settle into his limbs, and opened his eyes. Saris was still awake. She sat near the mouth of the alcove, one knee raised, her posture alert yet peaceful. The faint blue glow from her wrist device washed over the stone like a gentle tide. Ethan watched her for a quiet moment, the way her eyes tracked the horizon, the way she seemed to breathe with the landscape. She looked as if she belonged to this place, and at the same time as if she was waiting for something that had not yet arrived. You have not slept, he said softly. Saris turned her head slightly toward him. I do not require as much rest as you, she replied, her voice low but not unkind. He pushed himself upright with a wince, testing his leg. Still sore, but usable. Thank you for earlier, he said again, because it felt important to repeat. Most people would have walked away from a wreck like that. Her expression shifted, subtle but meaningful. Most people are not tasked with guiding others, she said. The word guiding lingered in his mind, echoing the strange symbols he had seen beneath the hull. Ethan hesitated before speaking again. Saris, the markings under the dropship. I know they meant something. You reacted when I mentioned them. The desert wind carried a soft whistle across the stone, as if encouraging truth but offering no judgment. Saris exhaled slowly, her gaze turning toward the stars overhead. Those markings were not human, she said, and they were not meant for you. He swallowed. But they were on my ship. Yes, she said, because your ship was not the only thing that crashed today. The words sank deep, quiet and heavy. Ethan studied her profile, the soft glow outlining the curve of her cheek and the faint shimmer in her eyes. You were on another vessel, he said. A vessel that was not supposed to be seen. Saris did not confirm, but she did not deny. She folded her hands together in her lap, the movement graceful and precise. My people use coded symbols to assign roles, duties, and paths, she said. They are not meant to be read by outsiders. They carry expectations and responsibilities. Expectations for you? Ethan asked gently. Her silence was an answer, but it was not cold. She was choosing her words carefully, weighing each one. I was not intended to cross paths with you today, she said. My route was structured. Your ship was not part of that structure. Ethan's brow furrowed. Then why help me? Saris looked at him fully now, her violet eyes steady and unguarded. Because the moment I saw you, the structure shifted. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest, not fear, but a quiet recognition. As if the universe had nudged both of them into the same narrow doorway and waited to see who moved first. The desert night pressed closer around them, calm and cool. Saris lowered her gaze to her hands. "There are rules in my role," she said. "Rules about who I may assist, who I may speak to, who I may reveal myself to." "And you broke them?" Ethan asked. She considered that, then nodded once. "I acted," she said simply, "because you were alive." The same words as before, but now layered with something deeper. Ethan leaned back against the rock, watching her in the dim glow. He understood now that she had not just saved him from debris. She had crossed a line, invisible but heavy. And she was carrying the weight of that choice quietly, with a calm that made his chest ache. The wind softened again, trailing dust in faint ribbons across the ground. Saris looked back toward the horizon, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone will come looking," she said. "For you?" Ethan asked. She nodded. "And for the truth you saw beneath your ship." Ethan woke to the faint warmth of morning light brushing across his face. The sky above the alcove had shifted from deep indigo to a pale, rising gold. He blinked the sleep from his eyes and found Saris already standing near the edge of the rocks, her silhouette outlined by the early sun. She was still, almost statuesque, as if listening to something he could not hear. He pushed himself upright carefully, testing his leg again. It felt better, stiff, but no longer throbbing. Saris turned toward him the moment he moved, as if she had been monitoring his breathing. "You rested," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "I guess I did." The early sunlight revealed more of her features than he had seen in the dim glow of her device the night before. The soft blue of her skin warmed slightly in the golden light, and the faint silver specks across her temples shimmered subtly. She stepped toward him with a fluid grace, then crouched beside him to check the seals on his suit again. Her fingers hovered just above the damaged section of his visor, not touching, but assessing with a precision that made him realize she understood human equipment far better than he understood her technology. "We should move soon," she said. "The shade here will fade, and the temperature will rise quickly." Ethan rubbed his hands together, scanning the desert. "Move where? Your people are looking for you." "My people are expecting me to report in." Saris did not answer immediately. She adjusted the wrist device, and a soft holographic projection flickered above it, showing a faint map of the surrounding terrain. But the map was not in any format he recognized. The lines curved in flowing symbols rather than coordinates, as if drawn by someone who measured distance through meaning rather than miles. "There is a temporary settlement 6 miles northeast," she said. "You will find shelter there." Ethan frowned. "And you?" Saris looked up slowly, meeting his eyes. "My presence there would raise questions." Her voice remained steady, but he sensed a quiet thread of something beneath it. Not fear, not regret, something like inevitability. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Saris, we got into this together. You saved me. We walk out together." Her gaze softened for the first time, just a hint, like a ripple passing over still water. "Ethan, the markings you saw beneath the ship, they were not simply symbols. They are identity codes, function codes. They tell anyone who reads them what I am meant to be and what path I am expected to follow. And rescuing me was not part of that path," Ethan said. She lowered her eyes. No, a delicate silence settled between them, carried by the warmth of the rising sun. Ethan shifted closer, careful not to intrude, but wanting her to know he was present. "Saris, you keep talking about roles and paths, but you chose to help me. That means something." She lifted her gaze again, and this time her expression held a quiet intensity. "It means I stepped outside the structure given to me." Ethan reached out, not to touch her, but to place his hand on the warm stone beside her, sharing the space gently. Maybe that structure needed a break. For a moment, she seemed to consider that, her eyes tracing the lines of the landscape as if the desert itself might offer an answer. The wind picked up slightly, carrying a faint whistle. Saris straightened. "We should move," she said again, but her voice carried a note of resolve that had not been there before. Ethan stood carefully, and she moved to support him without hesitation, her hand steady near his elbow. As they stepped into the open sand, he glanced back at the alcove, the small pocket of quiet where she had chosen to break her rules. Saris walked beside him, her posture tall, her eyes scanning the horizon for unseen signals. For the first time since the crash, Ethan felt they were not just trying to survive the desert. They were stepping into something that neither her coded markings nor his training could have predicted. The desert stretched ahead in long, rolling waves of pale gold as Ethan and Saris made their way toward the distant settlement. The sun climbed higher, warming the sand beneath their boots, but a light breeze softened the heat, carrying the dry scent of minerals and something faintly metallic. Ethan paced himself carefully, each step steady but measured. His leg felt stronger now, though an occasional twinge reminded him of the crash. Saris remained close beside him, adjusting her stride to match his without making it obvious. She walked with the quiet confidence of someone who had traveled far harsher landscapes. After an hour, the terrain shifted, the dunes giving way to flatter ground dotted with scattered stones that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Saris slowed, raising her wrist device slightly. A soft wave of cool blue light swept out in a semicircle. Ethan watched as faint symbols lit up along the edge of the projection, shifting and rotating as if reacting to unseen markers. "Is that a map?" he asked. "In a way," Saris replied. "It reads environmental traces and compares them with encoded pathways." Ethan tried to interpret the symbols, but they felt more like artwork than navigation. "So it is less about distance and more about direction?" She nodded. "My people navigate by meaning, not measurement." He let out a soft breath, impressed. "I guess that explains why your maps look like paintings." Saris tilted her head, considering that. "Paintings," she repeated softly, as if tasting the word for the first time. "Perhaps that is not so different from what they are." The breeze picked up again, carrying fine grains of sand that brushed across their suits. Ethan shielded his visor with one hand, but Saris seemed accustomed to it, moving with ease. As they walked, Ethan noticed her glancing upward from time to time, her eyes tracking the open sky, as if searching for signals hidden in the light. "You expect someone to find us," he said. It was not an accusation, just truth spoken gently. "Someone will," Saris answered. "Not immediately, but soon." Ethan adjusted the strap on his equipment pack. "And when they do, your people will not be happy you helped me. My people will not understand why you were even here." She paused then, not in fear, but reflection. "There is always a moment," she said quietly, "when a role and a choice stand side by side, and one must decide which truth they want to live." Ethan looked at her fully now, watching how the sunlight softened the blue of her skin into something almost luminous. "And which truth is this?" he asked. She met his gaze with a calm, centered clarity. "This is the one I chose." They continued walking, but the silence between them felt different now. Not empty, shared. As they crested a low ridge, Ethan noticed a faint shimmer on the horizon, like heat rising from metal. "Is that the settlement?" he asked. Saris narrowed her eyes, studying the shape. "Yes," she said after a moment. "It is small but safe. They have water and communication equipment." Relief warmed Ethan's chest. "Good. Maybe we can get a message out." Saris did not answer right away. She shifted her gaze back to the open desert behind them, scanning the sky again with subtle precision. "Ethan," she said softly, "there is something you should understand before we arrive." He stopped walking, waiting. "The markings you saw on your ship were not meant to be discovered by you. They were placed to signal me. Not to you. About you." Ethan felt the air around them still, as if the desert itself held its breath. "About me?" he said. "Yes," she replied, her voice calm but carrying a quiet weight. "Your crash was not an accident in the eyes of my people. It was considered a crossing, a meeting point, a convergence of paths, and I was the one assigned to witness it." His pulse quickened, not in fear but in a dawning realization. The ship, the markings, the way she had looked at him the first time. Saris took one small step closer, her eyes steady on his. "Ethan, your survival was never just an event. It was part of a role, one that neither of us expected to challenge." The desert settlement grew clearer with each step, its low structures shaped from sand-hardened panels that blended into the terrain like part of the landscape. Soft glints of reflective material caught the sunlight, marking roofs designed to gather water from the morning air. Ethan felt a subtle shift inside himself, a blend of relief and unease. Shelter was close, but so were the questions that had been trailing them since the crash. Saris walked slightly ahead now, her steps slower than before, as if she was giving him room to process what she had revealed. The breeze brushed across her hair, lifting a few strands in the warm currents. Ethan caught up to her. "Saris," he said carefully, "if my survival was part of some structured plan, why did it feel like everything that happened was an accident?" Saris glanced at him, her expression steady. "Because structure does not always look like intention. Sometimes it only becomes clear in the outcome." He shook his head lightly. "That sounds like fate." "It is not fate," she said. "It is alignment." They continued forward, the settlement now only a few minutes away. Ethan watched a small antenna tower come into view, thin and elegant, its top humming with a faint pulse. Communication equipment. A way to signal for help. But Sarah slowed at the sight of it, her gaze narrowing ever so slightly. Ethan noticed. "You are not comfortable with this place, are you?" She considered her answer, then spoke softly. "Humans are welcomed here. I am tolerated." The careful tone she used made Ethan's chest tighten. "Because of your role?" he asked. She nodded once. "And because I step outside of it." A group of sand-colored markers stood near the entrance, arranged in a pattern Ethan assumed was decorative. Saris paused beside them and touched one lightly, her fingers tracing the shape with familiarity. "These are boundary signs," she said. "They indicate the settlement is neutral and open for rest." Ethan exhaled with relief. "Then we are safe." "For a short time," she said. Her eyes lifted toward the distant sky, scanning again. Ethan followed her gaze, but saw only clear blue. "You keep checking the sky," he said. "What are you looking for?" Her voice dropped lower. "Signals from those who expect me to remain on my assigned path." Ethan felt the weight of her words settle between them. "Saris," he said gently, "you did what you felt was right. That does not sound like a crime." She looked at him fully now, her violet eyes clear and open in a way he had not seen before. "In your world, Ethan, choice shapes identity. In mine, identity is assigned first, and choice comes second." Ethan stepped closer, grounding himself in her presence. "Then maybe that is why our paths crossed. Maybe someone needed to see that you have a choice." For a moment, she simply held his gaze, letting the idea sink into the quiet morning air. Then she turned toward the settlement once more. "We must enter," she said. "The heat will rise soon. You need water and shade." They walked into the settlement's outer edge, their footsteps soft on the compacted sand. A few figures moved in the distance, carrying equipment or tending to small hydro towers. Ethan noticed something he had missed before. Whenever Sarah stepped into a patch of light, faint markings shimmered beneath her skin, as if reacting to sunlight. Not scars, not decoration, codes. The same kind he had seen under the wrecked ship. "Saris," he asked quietly, "those markings, are they connected to the symbols on the ship?" She hesitated, the first real hesitation he had seen from her. "Yes," she said finally. "They are the same language. The same system." Ethan swallowed. "And they define your role?" "They define my purpose," she corrected gently. "But purpose does not always define the heart." Ethan felt the meaning of that settle deep, quiet, and steady. Saris looked out across the settlement again, her posture calm but attentive. "Inside those buildings," she said, "you will find help. But the moment you speak with your people, the convergence between us will be examined, explained, pulled apart." Ethan breathed slowly. "And you?" She turned to him, her voice soft but unwavering. "I will be asked why I changed my path." The settlement's entrance led them into a shaded walkway lined with fabric canopies that fluttered gently in the warm breeze. The air beneath them felt cooler, touched by the faint scent of filtered water and minerals drawn from the desert itself. Ethan felt his shoulders relax for the first time since the crash. Saris, however, grew noticeably more still, her posture subtly tighter as a few residents glanced in their direction. They did not stare with hostility, but with quiet curiosity, as if reading her markings from a distance. Ethan walked slightly closer to her, not to shield her, but to stand beside her with intention. A tall human attendant approached them, carrying a small data slate. "Welcome," the attendant said. "We detected a crash signal early yesterday. Are you injured?" Ethan shook his head lightly. "Just shaken. My suit took the worst of it." The attendant nodded, then looked to Saris with a neutral expression. "Your companion is registered as off-path." Saris lowered her gaze a fraction. Ethan stepped in. "She is the reason I made it here," he said. "Without her, I would not be standing." The attendant paused, then inclined his head politely. You will find water and rest in the main shelter. Communication access is available once your identity is verified. Ethan thanked him and followed Saris toward the structure indicated. As they walked, Saris spoke softly, so only he could hear. They can read my markings. They know I stepped away from what was assigned. Does that mean you are in danger here? Ethan asked. Saris shook her head. Not danger. Observation. Inside the main shelter, cool air brushed against their faces. The walls were built from layered sandstone mixed with compacted mineral alloys, giving the interior a soft texture that glowed in the afternoon light. A small water station hummed quietly in the corner. Ethan filled a cup and drank deeply, the coolness settling his nerves. Saris did not approach the water immediately. Instead, she stood near the entrance, watching the room with a calm patience Ethan recognized from their first moments together. You can drink too. You know, Ethan said gently. This place looks safe. Safety is relative, she said. But she did move toward the water, taking a small amount and touching it to her forehead before drinking. A ritual? Ethan asked. She nodded. It is a way of acknowledging the place that offers it. Ethan smiled slightly. I like that. Before she could respond, a soft chime sounded through the shelter. The attendant returned, holding the slate. Ethan Cole, your identification is confirmed. You may send a message to your command. A transport can be arranged. Ethan felt a rush of relief, but it faded when he looked at Saris. Her expression had gone distant, almost unreadable. And her? Ethan asked. The attendant hesitated. She will be contacted by her own people. They have already signaled awareness of her location. Saris folded her hands gently in front of her. They will expect me to return, she said quietly. Ethan's chest tightened. What happens if you do? I resume my role, she said. The role assigned before the crash. Before I made a choice. Ethan took a small step toward her. And what happens if you do not return? Saris looked up at him, her eyes steady and open in a way that felt almost fragile. Then I redefine myself. And the markings that tell my purpose no longer match the person I have become. Ethan breathed slowly, letting that truth settle. She had saved him without hesitation. She had walked beside him through the desert. She had broken rules for reasons she could not fully explain yet. And now she stood at the edge of a moment that could rewrite everything she had been taught to be. Saris, he said softly, you do not have to face that choice alone. She held his gaze, and for the first time since the crash, he saw something flicker behind her calm exterior. Not fear. Something gentler. Something that asked for understanding. Ethan, she said, my people are almost here. The soft chime that signaled an incoming transmission echoed through the shelter a second time, quieter now, but unmistakable. Saris tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something beneath the sound itself. Her markings shimmered faintly under the filtered light, responding to a signal Ethan could not perceive. Outside, the quiet hum of the settlement continued, the sound of hydro filters and sand recyclers blending into a steady backdrop of calm. But Saris stood perfectly still, her posture straightening with a subtle shift that told Ethan the moment she had been anticipating was no longer distant. It was here. Ethan stepped closer. How long until they arrive? She lowered her eyes. Minutes. Perhaps less. Their approach will be precise. Ethan felt a strange tension build in his chest. This was the part he had not thought through. Rescue for him meant returning home. Rescue for Saris meant returning to a role she had stepped away from the moment she pulled him from the wreck. What do they expect you to do? He asked. To return, she said softly. To resume the path written for me. Her voice carried no bitterness, only quiet acceptance. But Ethan could sense the weight of it, the silent pressure of expectation. He remembered the shimmering codes beneath the ship's hull, the symbols etched into metal with purpose. A language designed to instruct, not to ask. Saris, he said gently, is that what you want? She looked at him fully, and for a moment he saw the desert reflected in her eyes. The walk they shared, the moments of choice she had made despite the structure that guided her. Want is a human word, she said. My people do not place value in it. That does not answer my question. She held his gaze, and the silence that followed felt like the space between two breaths, fragile and stretched thin by truth. Ethan, she said quietly, when I helped you, I did not think of my role. I acted because I saw someone who needed aid. That was my choice. It is the only answer I have. Before he could speak again, The air inside the shelter shifted. The attendant at the entrance stepped aside, looking upward. A soft glow, almost like a pale ribbon of light, shimmered across the ceiling. Ethan felt a faint vibration through the floor, gentle but intentional, as if something enormous moved overhead without disturbing the structure itself. Saris stood taller, her markings brightening in response. "They are here," she whispered. The light dimmed, replaced by a smooth resonance from just outside the shelter door. Ethan felt the pressure change slightly, like the moment before a storm breaks, yet with no threat behind it, only presence. The attendant gestured respectfully. "Your people request your audience," he said to Saris. She stepped forward, but Ethan reached out instinctively, stopping his hand just short of touching her arm. "Saris," he said, voice low, "you do not have to explain your choices to anyone but yourself." Her expression softened, the smallest shift, but meaningful. "You speak as if choosing is easy." "It is not," Ethan said. "It is simply yours." She held his gaze for a heartbeat longer, then turned toward the entrance. But before crossing the threshold, she paused. "Ethan," she said quietly, "whatever they decide, you must understand something." He waited, the air around them still as sand before dawn. "Your survival was never just an intersection of paths," she said. "You were placed in my route for a reason. But the reason was not what they expected." His breath caught. "What do you mean?" Saris looked beyond him, toward the soft blue of the settlement interior. "I was sent to observe a convergence. Instead, I found a person." With that, she stepped toward the doorway where the soft resonance waited, her silhouette framed by the shifting glow from outside. Ethan watched her markings brighten one last time before she crossed the boundary where her world and his began to collide. The light waiting outside the shelter did not shine so much as breathe, a gentle pulse that moved across the sand like a living echo. Ethan followed Saris to the doorway but stopped just behind her, letting the glow brush against his boots without stepping into it. The air felt warmer here, carrying a soft vibration that resonated in his chest, steady and calm. A shape emerged within the glow, not a figure, but an outline formed from shifting strands of light, as if someone had sketched a presence without giving it a body. Saris bowed her head slightly, her markings responding in a ripple of pale silver. Ethan watched her expression, trying to read what she felt, but her face remained composed, serene in a way that made the moment feel sacred rather than ominous. A voice reached them, not spoken aloud but carried on the air, gentle and clear. "Saris Vaila, your signal is acknowledged." Saris lifted her gaze. "I am present." The light shifted, forming patterns that Ethan realized matched the same style as the markings on the ship, the same language that seemed to follow her everywhere. "Your path diverged," the voice said. "Explain the alteration." Saris breathed slowly, her shoulders rising and falling with calm intention. "I encountered a human. He required aid." The light shimmered. "Aid is not prohibited." "The choice I made extended beyond aid," Saris said. "I remained with him. I guided him." Such guidance was not assigned. Ethan stepped slightly forward, his voice steady. "She saved my life." The light reacted, a subtle ripple of acknowledgement, though Ethan did not know if it understood the weight of what he said. Saris turned her head just enough to meet Ethan's eyes. "He observes truth without markings," she said softly, almost as if speaking to both Ethan and the presence before them. The voice responded, "Your markings define your purpose. They guide your decisions." Saris stood taller. "They do. But purpose is not the same as choice." The air stilled. Even the breeze seemed to pause. The light folded inward for a moment, its form tightening into a narrow column, as if concentrating. "You stepped outside your role," the voice said. "Yet your convergence remained stable." Saris spoke gently. Because it was not a disruption. It was a realization. Ethan watched her, feeling something shift inside the moment. Saris was not defending herself. She was declaring something. The light flickered softly. Convergence with a human was expected. Attachment was not. Ethan's breath caught. Saris did not look away. "Attachment is a human word," she said, "but its meaning resonates." The shelter behind them grew quiet, as though even the settlement itself leaned in to hear. The voice softened. "You have changed your path." "I have expanded it," Saris replied. Another long silence, warm as drifting sand, and just as patient. Then the light pulsed once, slowly. A path may change if the traveler understands the shift. Saris exhaled, the faintest release of emotion. I understand. The glow softened, thinning into a ribbon of pale gold that drifted upward like dust caught in morning sun. Your markings will update, the voice said gently. Your role will adapt. Saris closed her eyes briefly, as if absorbing something profound. Thank you. The light dimmed, its presence fading until only the ordinary brightness of the desert remained. Saris turned back toward Ethan. For a moment neither spoke. Her markings glowed softly beneath her skin, warm and new, as if rewritten by her own truth. Ethan's voice lowered. What does it mean? Saris stepped closer, her expression open and quiet. It means my path is no longer written for me, she said. It is written with me. The desert wind moved gently between them, carrying the soft gold of afternoon light across her violet eyes. And for the first time, Ethan realized the markings on her skin were no longer instructions. They were reflections. Reflections of a choice she made not because she was assigned, but because she cared. Saris held his gaze with a calm certainty that felt like the world settling into place. Ethan, she said softly, the convergence was not the ship. It was you.